Steel City. Is everybody ready to go? It's Proclaim the greatest radio show.
Welcome, fans. This is another Out of Your Mind episode here of The Spread, baseball edition with our senior baseball analyst, Jay Dash. This is Big Easy. This is the sport we love the most. Jim is going to sit this one out.
Got stuff to do, man.
He's going to catch us on the next one. He believes that this division is competitive, for the most part, outside of Texas. But
yeah, I don't think he's very high on Texas or Seattle this season. But he loves Houston.
And you can always get his opinions or comments about this division or any team, on the Twitter.
Yeah, you can hit us up at bet_the_spread, or you can hit Jim up personally at betjimthewin. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/betthespread, and you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/betthespread.
We're going to keep it rolling right now with AL West, a division that looks pretty competitive to me.
Yeah, it does look pretty competitive, and it was last year outside of Oakland, I'd say, and that's who we're going to start off with here. They made a couple signings this offseason. They signed relief pitcher John Axford, relief pitcher Ryan Madsen, and starting pitcher Henderson Alvarez. Alvarez is still a pretty young pitcher, and he has some upside. He'll be somewhere in this rotation, I would have to believe, although they do have several pitchers out there that have a shot to grab one of these back end of the rotation spots. But, I mean, their best moves were through trades. They traded for first baseman Yonder Alonso from San Diego. They gave up Drew Pomeranz for him. I do like Drew Pomeranz. I always thought he was a good player, but he got injured a little bit too much. He never really could make it through a full season. They actually moved him to the bullpen for a little bit. But Yonder Alonso, I'm not too high on this guy either. I mean, he doesn't have much power for a first baseman. He's decent, I'd say. He's an average player. He had upside at one time. He was actually a higher prospect than Paul Goldschmidt at one time. And Alonso just never really worked out the way Goldschmidt did. But, I mean, he still has some upside. He's still somewhat of a younger guy. He's in his prime now. So he has a chance to turn it around, but I wouldn't say that's a major move. One of their bigger moves was trading for shortstop, now probably second baseman for Oakland, Jed Lowry. They actually gave him up to Houston a couple years ago. Now they're bringing him back. I know Oakland fans love Jed Lowry. And they only gave up right-handed pitcher Brendan McMurray for him. So they really didn't give up much, and they brought a very good player in to play second base. A couple other trades they made. They traded for outfielder Chris Davis. He'll play left field for him most likely. That was another steal. It was a trade with Milwaukee. They gave up prospects Jacob Nottingham and Bubba Derby. And really, Chris Davis is a huge power bat. He's not perfect. He's not going to hit for a high average or anything. He doesn't play great left field. But this is a big power bat, and that's a very good upgrade from what they had prior to bringing him in. They also traded for another outfielder, Chris Coghlan from the Chicago Cubs. I mean, he was kind of forced out of Chicago. They're getting younger, getting some beast players out there. But Coghlan's always been a good player, too, so he'll probably be a fourth outfielder for Oakland here, but a very, very good outfielder. One of the top fourth outfielders in baseball, I would have to say. And they only gave up starting pitcher Aaron Brooks for him.
So it seems like they made a lot of good moves on their side. These guys
Yeah, I mean, it
perform.
seems like Oakland does that. I mean, not every single year, but Oakland, they always seem to make some solid moves. Billy Beane out there always trying to make those small to mid-level moves that work out really well, you know what I mean? They lost relief pitcher Edward Mujica to free agency, and they lost Brett Lawrie in a trade with the White Sox. They got two prospects in return for him. So what they have here offensively is Chris Davis, Josh Reddick. I mean, Josh Reddick had a big year last year. He hit .272 with a .333 on base, 20 home runs. He didn't strike out hardly at all last year. This is a guy they brought over from the Boston Red Sox a handful of years ago now. And really, I mean, they didn't have high expectations for this guy, but he's come through. He had the big 30 home run year, and then he kind of tailed off a little bit. But he bounced back very nicely last year and had a big season. And Billy Burns in center field. This is one of my favorite players, actually. He was a little bit older of a prospect coming up through the system, and I always wonder why they didn't call him up a little bit earlier. He killed it in the system. He has huge speed, and in fact, He led the team in average last season with a 294 average and a 334 on base. He doesn't have much power or anything, but he has nice speed. He plays great center field. So I think this is a huge value player for him. And some people are saying he's going to have a little bit of a step back this season. Don't think he's going to hit 294. But even if he doesn't, I still see huge value in this guy. So I really like this outfield. You got the big power bat in left and Chris Davis. Josh Reddick looks like he's turning into a very good player. If he stays healthy, he goes on the DL sometimes. But he was able to stay healthy last year, 526 at-bats, and he did have those 20 home runs. And then Billy Burns, I mean, a nice leadoff hitter. This guy's probably going to lead off for him and set the table for some of these other guys. Then you turn to the infield. You got Danny Valencia at third base right now. He only played in 47 games last season, had 183 at-bats, but he did hit 284, had a 356 on base, hit 11 home runs. So he actually had a pretty good season for his norm, actually. He played for Toronto a couple years ago. Was never a terrible player or anything, but he looked pretty good in limited time last season. I don't know if he's going to be able to stay there all season or not. He might go to the DL as well. They actually do have a third base prospect, Renato Nunez. He's only 21 years old. But in Double-A last year, in 381 at-bats, he hit 278 with a 332 on base, 18 jacks. Now, he only did take 28 walks, but he only K'd 66 times as well. Like I said, he doesn't walk enough, but he has 66 home runs over the last 3 seasons. I don't know if you're going to be able to see him this season or if it's going to be next season. But this guy looks like a very good hitter, and I think he is their future at third base, although he may move over to first base as well if some of these other prospects they have. They actually have a few first base / third base prospects in the minors that look pretty decent, so we'll have to see how it turns out. But then you look at shortstop, Marcus Semien. They brought him over from the White Sox, I think it was at the beginning of last year. And everybody was expecting big things from him. And if he could just strike out less, he could be a 20-20 guy. Possibly. I'm not going to guarantee that, but I actually had high interest in this guy when he was in the minors. He was doing work, I guess I would say.
Putting in work.
Yeah, he had power, he had speed. He struck out a little bit too much, but he also walked a ton. Now, his walks aren't where they're supposed to be, aren't where they were in the minor leagues, and his strikeouts went way up. And he's a terrible shortstop. He's probably the worst fielding shortstop in baseball. So I don't know what they're going to get out of him. I'm guessing they expect big things out of him still and hope he can turn it around. He might have to move over to third base, though. Maybe he's their future third baseman. I don't know if he's going to be able to stick at shortstop. And then Jed Lowry at second base, like we said before, moving over from shortstop. The last time he played for him, he was a shortstop. But Jed Lowry, he's definitely a good bat in the lineup. In at first base, Yonder Alonso, like I said before, I'm not too high on him, but they also got Mark Canha out there. That's a guy that can play in the outfield as well. I didn't mention before, but he could play some first base as well. Last season, he hit 254 with a 315 on base, had 16 home runs and 441 at bats, though. Also added 7 stolen bases, so he's a pretty good base runner as well. I mean, last year was his first taste of big league ball, and I mean those aren't terrible numbers. I think this guy can improve a little bit as well and maybe find his way in the lineup. There were stretches last season when Mark Canha was on a tear. And then a catcher, you got Stephen Vogt. Another good season out of him. He hit 261 with a 341 on base, had 18 home runs out of the catcher's position. No, that ain't terrible. He can also play some first base as well. And then Josh Phegley as their second catcher. So I really like what they have at catcher there. I mean, they have some holes here. Like I said, they could improve at first base. They maybe third base by the time the season gets along. I don't know if Valencia is going to do what he did in limited time last season, and possibly shortstop as well. But everything else looks pretty good. And then Billy Butler, DH. He's an average DH these days. He had that big season with Kansas City. Everybody thought he was going to build off of that, and he never really had that same type of season. So he's just an average DH at best. And I mean, he can play first base as well, but he's not a very good fielder. So I just don't see much of him on the field this season as well. But a couple of these prospects here I was mentioning, first base / outfield prospect Matt Olson, they're hoping this is their future at first base. He's 21 years old. He's 6'5", 230 pounds, a big lefty. He hit 249 last season, but he did have a 388 on base because he took 105 walks. But he also did K 139 times in 466 at-bats. had 17 home runs. But if you look, he has 222 walks over the last 2 seasons and 77 home runs over the last 3 seasons. It might be another season for him. It might not be until 2017, but they're hoping maybe a taste of action here in September, late in the season or something, wouldn't hurt as well. It all depends how he looks this season in AAA when he goes to AAA. Those numbers were from AA. And then there's this other guy, Ryan Healy. How about that? Did you ever see the name Ryan spelt with an O instead of an A?
No.
How do you feel about that?
Right on.
Right on?
Right on.
Right on.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
That's what it is.
Well, it's not Ryan.
Well, it ain't Ryan. It's Ryan. I mean, it's Ryan Healy.
Right on.
Right on. He's 24 years old. Hit .302 with a .339 on base last year in AA and 507 at bats. Doesn't K much, just 82 Ks, but he also doesn't walk too much, 30 walks. He did hit 10 home runs. I think it's going to be a little bit harder for him because you got Nunez and Olsen, the 2 bigger prospects. So this guy might turn into a utility player playing both positions, not every day. But who knows? Maybe he steps up and plays better baseball than one of those 2 guys this season. They also have a second baseman in the minors, Joe Wendell, 25 years old, hit .289 with a .323 on base last season in AAA and 577 at bats. Has a little bit of pop, 10 home runs, a little bit of speed, 12 stolen bases. Doesn't take many walks at all, just 22 compared to 114 strikeouts. But he has a career .291 average with a .345 on base, so he can hit. Again, I think this guy is going to be, I'm not going to say he's going to be a career backup, I guess, but with what they have there, Jed Lowry, unless they move Lowry over to shortstop because Semien struggles again, then you can give Wendell a chance. But he's 25 years old, so I don't know if he's going to be anything more than a utility guy. And one more utility guy, Chad Pinder, 23 years old, hit .317 with a .361 on base, 15 home runs, 32 doubles, but just 28 walks compared to 103 Ks and 477 at-bats in AA. This guy can play second base, third base, shortstop. Again, maybe not this season, maybe next season, but this looks like a good hitter, and you can move him around the field. If they need an opening somewhere, maybe this Chad Pinder can fill in no matter what spot it is in the infield or even the outfield, who knows. Then you look at the rotation. Here's what I'd say, man. You got an ace in Sonny Gray, and then Jesse Hahn, he's a pretty good pitcher. He pitched pretty well for San Diego when he got a taste of big league action a couple years ago. He goes over to Oakland. He pitches pretty well again, I would say, but he hasn't had 30 starts in a season. I think he hasn't had more than 16 starts in a season. So they're trusting this guy to be a big part of the rotation, and he hasn't really done anything over a full season yet. So that's a big question mark right there. And then after that, Kendall Graveman, a very young guy who had a big spring last year, and everybody thought he was going to be a beast. He goes into the season and really didn't perform how they hoped. When I say beast, I don't mean he was going to be an ace or anything. That they thought he could be a good number 3, number 2 pitcher for him, and he really didn't do that either. And they're trusting him to be their number 3. We'll have to see how they go by the time spring's over. But, I mean, the options behind them aren't great either. You got Chris Bassett, Rich Hill. I mentioned Henderson Alvarez before. I think he'll work his way into this rotation somehow. And then Jared Parker as well. I mean, Jared Parker's a guy that pitched a lot of games for him over the past 2 years, something like 60 games, I believe it was. So he's been a guy that's been able to stay healthy over the past 2 years. Doesn't give you great numbers or anything, but at the back end of the rotation, it wouldn't be terrible. But I'm a little worried about the rotation, especially if Jesse Hahn doesn't step up and pitch a full season and provide value for this team. I mean, there's a lot of questions here behind Sonny Gray.
Yeah, that rotation doesn't look very strong to me.
I do like Gray, but outside of that, man, I'm with you. Like I said, Jesse Hahn, I had him on my fantasy team. He gave me good value when he was with San Diego, but he wasn't terrible last year, but he did take a step back. But they're hoping he can pitch like he did in San Diego. I think he had over a strikeout per inning. Maybe it was just a bit under a strikeout per inning for San Diego. He didn't do that with Oakland last season. They do have a big-time prospect in the minors, though, Sean Manaea. Big lefty, 6'5", 245 pounds. He had a 2.66 ERA in 74 and a third innings pitched, just 67 hits and 27 walks compared to 90 Ks between three levels, rookie ball, A advanced, and Double A last season. In his minor league career, 196 innings pitched, just 169 hits. He did walk 80 batters, so his walk rate is a little high right now. They're hoping they can fix that, but he is 6'5", so you got to expect it to be up a little bit. But 236 Ks. This guy Ks a ton of people. I don't know if he's going to be in the bigs this season or not. If they want to be in a race, I think this is a guy they may want to give a chance to at some point this season. I really like Sean Manaea. He came over from Kansas City in some deal. I can't remember what deal it was. And then one other pitching prospect, Dylan Overton, 24 years old now, 6'2", 175 pounds. He had a 3.43 ERA between A advanced and Double A last season, 126 innings pitched, allowed 127 hits, but just 27 walks compared to 106 Ks. So this guy, he's not a top end of the rotation type guy. I think Sean Manaea could be well, I wouldn't say an ace, maybe a number one or a number two. I think Dylan Overton's more of a 3 tops, probably a 4 or 5 in the end. But Overton, 159 Ks compared to 31 walks and 163 career minor league innings. So this guy has great control. And I think he can be a part of this rotation as well because they don't have much in this rotation, I don't believe. Then you look at the bullpen, Sean Doolittle at the back end. If he can stay healthy, one of the best closers in baseball. And they got some other guys here. They brought in over Ryan Matson, like I said. He's a good reliever. They got Liam Hendricks. John Axford they have as well. Like I said, they signed. Now, I mean, he's not the same John Axford we knew 5 years ago, but he's still a pretty good bullpen piece. And he could work his way to the back end if he pitches well this season. Felix Dubron's out there. But my favorite, RJ Alvarez. This was a guy that was on Cam Bedrosian's team, the guy from the Angels, and Bedrosian was a huge, well, I wouldn't say a huge prospect or anything. He was just a reliever, but he had huge numbers in the minors, and they thought he was going to be a beast. And he kind of got lit up in the big leagues. But RJ Alvarez, he looks like he's going to be a closer soon. I wouldn't mind having him in the 7th or 8th inning, and I think he's going to step up and be a closer in the future. So what are you looking at here, man? What are you thinking about the Oakland A's? I think they got a little bit better offensively, I would have to say. But again, I still got questions with this pitching staff behind Sonny Gray. Although I do think the bullpen has got better this offseason. So with what they lack in the rotation, they may be able to make up for it in the bullpen and stay in this race. And who knows what they can do at the deadline with Billy Beane. Maybe make some deals and bring in some pitchers to stay in that race towards the end of the season.
Yeah, looking at the Oakland Athletics on paper, it just looks like everything has to go right for them to have a good year. You know what I mean? So, and it could, it well could, but some guys are going to have to really step up and prove you wrong in some cases.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, man. I mean, they have a small core that I like here.
Yeah.
Doolittle at the back end, Vogt at catcher. You got the ace in Sonny Gray, and then Jed Lowry you brought back. He's a good player. And then Billy Burns, one of my favorite players, like I said, in center field. I think he's going to be a good player. He's still young. So they got a small core here. I think there's just too many pieces. So I'm going to say they stick in last place. Don't make too many improvements in the standings.
I'll give him. I won't give him last place. I'll give him 4th.
4th place?
Yeah, I'll put him squarely there.
Let me try to guess who you're going to put in last then. Seattle?
Yeah.
That is who it is?
You better believe it. Because they don't have much.
They made a ton of moves this offseason, man. A ton. I got a whole list here. When we do Seattle segment, you're going to hate it.
But you know what? It definitely hinges on if they bring anybody in at the deadline, too, though, like you said.
Well, I mean, they got to stay in it until the deadline. Marcus Semien, I mean, they should not give this guy too much time if he keeps making errors. He makes way, way too many errors.
Worst fielder in the National League. Is that what you said about him? That's
American
hard.
League.
And, in American League. That's hard.
I mean, you go look at his numbers, man. I'm telling you. It was like halfway through the season last year. He had 22 errors or something. But they also have Eric Sogard out there. I mean, that's a fan favorite. He's not a beast or anything, but they do like him out there. I don't think he's the answer at shortstop or anything, though.
Pick your game up, Marcus.
if he can just strike out less, take the walks like he did in the minor leagues, I think that 2020 season you'd be able to see it. I mean, he still gives you a little bit of pop. I mean, he's not terrible or anything. But that's it, man. Wrap it up.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our preseason Oakland A's breakdown with our senior analyst, Jay Dash. This is Big Easy. If you want to get at us, you know how to do it. Hit us up at Twitter on bet_the_spread.
Yeah, at bet_the_spread and at betjimthewin if you want to hit up Jim personally.
Like us on Facebook, YouTube, subscribe to that channel. We're going to talk to you again here shortly with another breakdown of the AL West. Click subscribe.